Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the premier economic forecast for real estate professionals featuring HAR's chief economist, Dr. Ted C. Jones. I'm Stasi Pena, your 2026 Young Professionals Network Advisory Group Chair. Hundreds of HAR members have registered for today's forecast, and we would like to take a moment to thank so many of you for your amazing donation to the Hartsfield Elementary School Toy Drive and Christmas celebration. Realtors have big hearts, and we have raised enough money this year to ensure that these kids will have a wonderful Christmas. What can I say about last year? I was just reading a press release from HAR that caught my eye. The market stayed strong enough through the second half of 2025. Inventory hit record levels, and prices began to cool a bit, which is a good sign as we look ahead to 2026. Rates still matter, of course, but there are definitely some promising opportunities for buyers and sellers right now. I'm sure we will learn more from Dr. Jones on his take on rates and inventory. Before we get to the forecast, I'd like to take a moment to congratulate this year's HAR chair, Teresa Hill, and the HAR Executive Committee. That includes Chair-elect Kat Robinson, Vice Chairs Susan Enora, and Troy Cawthron, along with Secretary-Treasurer Karishma Ezrani and past Chair Shay Cotter. And I have to point out that for the first time ever, 3 HAR officers launched their leadership journey in YPN. We are so proud of you, Kat, Susan, and Karishma. You might be wondering why HAR's YPN Advisor Group is hosting an economic forecast presentation. Several years ago, YPN identified an opportunity to present a yearly economic forecast for HAR members. Started as an in-person event, it became so popular we sold out every single year. So we decided to move that event online and make it free to all members. A win-win. Keep in mind that if you have any questions for Dr. Jones, you may post them in the Q&A, and at the end of the presentation, Dr. Jones will answer as many questions as time allows. Dr. Ted C. Jones is an internationally recognized real estate economist that served 27 years as Chief Economist, Senior Vice President for Stewart Title Guarantee Company. He also served as Stewart's Director of Investor Relations from 1997 to 2017, a Fortune 1000 company. He earned a PhD in finance with a minor in statistics and a master's degree in land economics and real estate from Texas A&M University. Before joining Stewart, Ted served as chief economist at Texas A&M University's Real Estate Center. He has completed appraisals and complex property analysis in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Mexico, United Kingdom, the Caribbean, and the United States. In the past 40 years, he has typically delivered more than 150 economic presentations annually. And closer to home, he served as chairman of the Houston Association of Realtors in 2004. Now, before we have Ted join us in the studio, I want to take the liberty of telling you about HAR's award-winning Young Professionals Network. HAR's visionary board of directors established YPN 17 years ago to encourage younger members to get involved with HAR through education, community service, and most importantly, by creating a path to HAR leadership. Let's take a look at this video about who we are and what we do.
Celebrating a year filled with connection, growth, and unforgettable moments with HAR YPN. Coming together to make a real difference for families in need. Connecting with leaders and learning what's trending at YPN Hot Topics. Coming together, singing our hearts out, and supporting Tree Pack. Strengthening relationships that elevate our growth and our industry. Spreading holiday cheer and making unforgettable memories with the students of Hartsfield. YPN came together to bring joy, laughter, and a little extra magic to their Christmas celebration. Honoring the rising stars who are redefining excellence in real estate. The 20 Under 40 Awards celebrate leadership, achievement, and the bright future of our industry. From every event to every moment that moved us forward, Thank you for being part of this amazing year with HAR YPN.
But getting there. Outlook for real estate and the economy. Now, I've lived a lot in airplanes. I've actually flown on American Airlines as a passenger, 5.5 million actual flight miles, and flown a bunch of airplanes myself. Now, King Solomon, when we talk about this upcoming year, King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new beneath our sun. And I started thinking about Carvana. You know, the auto delivery, they give you the big token. It's like you buy out a vending machine in your car. And they came up with this concept. And then I found this picture of 1933 in Chicago of the Nash Auto Company. It looks almost the same, doesn't it? So there's not much new under the sun, but we've got to execute on what we have. Now, I grew up in a sheep ranch in southwestern Colorado, and I never want to see snow ever again. We used to feed up to 5 tons, some mornings at 30 below zero. Never, never, never again. So if there's snow there involved, I'm not there. On this one, count me out. If some of y'all want to do this, Stazzy, you may want to, who knows on this one, but not myself at all. It's just not going to work on that one. Do you want me to start again? Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, guys. Well, I'm not going to do this now that y'all can see what's going on there at all. Last month, I was speaking at Georgia Tech, and what I learned, they're a great engineering school, but you sure don't want to go there and study English or linguistics. People can't even spell. You think they've used technology to get that. Now, I'm now 71. Don't worry about getting old. You're still going to do stupid stuff, just a lot slower than you used to. For some of y'all, trust me, it's coming. It's not there yet. So we're sitting here, now we're on a beautiful day in Houston, but we're looking at a winter that's going to come in. We talked about, climate change. I don't believe in man-caused climate change. I believe the climate always changes. But you're looking at a picture of a coal-fired electric utility in the background. And it's literally got electrostatic precipitators and sulfur dioxide scrubbers. And in front of it is a complete solar farm buried with snow that probably won't run for 3 or 4 days. So we have to be careful in how we get our power and rely on it. Lastly, I want to talk to you about electricity and subsidies and what have you. Energy costs can be a very critical component of economic development. And we've got some great news in Texas. We have very cheap electricity costs. But if you want to look at subsidies required, just look at this. For example, wind, you subsidize at $18.58 per megawatt hour on construction. All natural gas is 39 cents. Good news for Texas. Just take a look at this. We have low electricity costs. And the more and more oil and gas we produce in Texas, the lower it goes, believe it or not, after all that has to do with subsidies and what have you. So we have some good news coming up on that economic front. Now, I do believe in climate change. Literally a year ago, I was speaking in Miami in January, and I was going to go to New Orleans to speak, and they had a snowstorm. Can you imagine snowball fights on Bourbon Street? And that's what they had. My friend took these pictures. He was there. They just took random pictures of people coming down the street. And having grown up on a ranch in the mountains in southwestern Colorado, I commented, I said, my goodness, those poor people from New Orleans, they can't even drive sober, much less on snow and ice. How do they do that? And he said, don't worry, Ted, they got chains in New Orleans. And that's the creativity we're going to talk about. You're supposed to laugh there. All right, why don't I believe in man-caused global warming? These are the tidal pools that were built by the Roman Empire off of Malta, literally thousands of years ago. And notice they still feel perfectly today as they did at the time they were built. Great news we had this past year. We didn't have one hurricane hit the U.S. or one hurricane form in the Gulf. Wow, that's important. Why? Because we sit here in Houston, Texas and live with that. Oh, by the way, it's the second time 10 years ago we didn't have any either that do the same thing. Okay, so we're going to talk today about flying. Remember, headwinds, tailwinds, turbulence. Do you ever wonder in a cockpit why there's so many dials and gauges and switches and knobs? Well, this is a new jet. This is a glass cockpit, Citation jet. But here's the airplane that Charles Lindbergh, flew all the way to Paris, and that was his entire cockpit. Notice there's more gasoline tubes than anything else, just bare bones. So what's the purpose of all the stuff in a cockpit? It tells you how you're going to, where are we going to go, how we're going to get there, and what does it take to get there? Direction, altitude, speed, and fuel. And for y'all in your realtor career today, especially the young professional networks, you better have a goal. Because if you're not going where you think you're going, you're not going to get there. This is the second generation. This isn't the analog cockpit. But you can see that we have a lot of things. And then the third generation, it's all glass. I want you to think about Charles Lindbergh Airplane like doing real estate before HAR.com. And today, the latest HAR.com is the glass cockpit with all the technology that'll help you get there. I got to fly this airplane. What a kick to do that thing. Oh, it's intriguing. If you're coming in from the west into Houston to land, they have these way stations, and one of them is called Bluebell. You fly right over the top of it. You have to be at 9,100 feet when you go over it. So they have all these routes to get here, just like we do, and 737 and all the others that we've had the opportunity to do on these things. All right. Now, why did President Trump, I was asked to talk about President Trump. One of y'all called me up and said, you better talk about Trump. What is he going to do? Well, President Trump's going to do whatever he wants to do. It's his second term. As long as he has a majority in Congress that keeps voting for him, he can do whatever he wants. And just like this elephant, I don't think he cares about the rules of jumping, but he's going to win that course and get through it. So the other question I had up front was, please discuss the tariffs. I want to show you where we were before the U.S. introduced tariffs. You can see how much tariffs, both cash and non-monetary type tariffs, restrictions to do business in the country, we put on our other countries. Look how much they were putting on us. And why is that important? Well, there was a study done by Bank of America, and that they found out was to grow economically, you have to give a positive investment, return on your money. And what they did is they looked at Bank of America at the last 5 years of federal debt. And what they found out was for every dollar we borrowed and we spent, the only return we'd ever get was 58 cents. So for every dollar we were spending, we were losing 42 cents. To grow this country economically and have hot housing sales and economic growth and wealth creation, you really need to have creative things. What we've learned is every dollar we spend in the U.S. on manufacturing creates $2.64 of economic activity. And now you understand the great big push to build things in the United States of America. That's from the National Association of Manufacturers. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation said that for every dollar spent in the U.S. on U.S. auto manufacturing and parts, generates $3.45 to $2.43 in economic activity. Folks, what I'm trying to tell y'all is the big push to bring construction back to the United States is to create wealth, homeowners, and what have you. Great news. And this just came out the day before yesterday. U-Haul announced their number one cities top growth for U-Haul, other people using business. Houston, Texas was number 2 in the country. But notice there's 4 cities in Texas, that were in the top 10. That's astounding, folks. Well, you might surprise you, Brownsville, Harlingen. It shows you the importance of economic development. That's all SpaceX, something that didn't exist only 15, 20 years ago. Now, United Van Lines is a little different. They're older people, higher wealth, and very often corporate reloads. And where their top inbound states, percentage inbound shipments versus outbound shipments, there's not one great big heavy population state. We continue the trend across the nation to move to small town America. And it's popping up all the way through. I mean, you look at Nevada, Arkansas, Alabama, Carolinas always win, Idaho. Top outbound states, and I spoke to a group literally this week in Miami from New York and New Jersey. In New York, New Jersey, California, North Dakota, the cold. Colorado might surprise y'all. And what we're learning is more and more people are not liking the drug culture of Colorado. They were one of the first major states to completely legalize many of the drugs and go from there. So why did people move in 2025? You as professional realtors need to understand why they're going there, because it may dictate to the type of home they're going to buy and where they want to live. 29% want to be closer to family. 26% because of jobs, 1 out of 4 if you think about that. 14% retirement. Top inbound states for retirement, there's no surprises here. Florida's number 1. I was surprised at Delaware and Wyoming and Maine. A lot of that is people are saying, I want to live there. Notice every one of those small town America, if you think about that. Top inbound states by job move, Texas was 8th highest in the country. Washington, D.C., I think that may cease as more and more federal employees are retired and opting out for early retirement. But at least Texas made the list on that. And then if you want to look at United Van Line's top towns, inbound MSAs, there's not one big town there. In fact, what you're looking at are a lot of college towns, a lot of destination places, a lot of economic growth places like Brownsville, Harlingen with SpaceX. Guys, a lot of destination. So I'm trying to tell you that we kind of get this dichotomy of big corporate towns like Houston, Texas, second best growth in the country for U-Haul. And then you get at other towns like Brownsville, Harlingen in that. So let's talk inflation. And I've got two pictures to describe inflation to you. This is what inflation, without inflation, this is what you get. And this is what you get with inflation. You just don't get as much because your dollar is worth less. You can spend less. So let me tell you the good news. The good news is we have 2.7% inflation right now. And yes, that is down from 9.1% literally back there in 2022 during President Biden's administration. Notice there is one missing point here, that white gap at the very end. That's when the government shut down and they didn't gather enough statistics to even calculate that. Now, the Fed is going to shoot for 2% inflation. We're not there yet. And it's one of the reasons the Fed thus far, at least the current Fed chairman, has not aggressively cut the Fed funds target rate and where they hope to get rates to. I expect in May when we have a new Fed funds chairman, they may start doing that more aggressively, but we'll see. If it's a very strong economy, we probably won't. So let's talk borrowed money because interest rates are on the top of everyone's minds coming up for housing sales and commercial real estate this year. I love this picture. Literally took this picture 40 years ago in San Angelo. It was going through a bankruptcy. You know, you can always go broke with borrowed money, but if you don't borrow money, you never can if you think about that logic. So what's the forecast for interest rates? This is the latest from Fannie Mae and the MBA. And notice the average rate through 2027 for both these things for the full year is not out of the sixes. Now, Fannie Mae does see that we're going to get out of the sixes in the fourth quarter of this year, only down to 5.9%. The MBA doesn't see us get out of the sixes at all. So where do I think we're going to go? Well, you say, well, we need another rate cut. I do want to caution you about that. The two big red arrows on the bottom show you the last time the Feds, before this December, cut rates. And at both times when they cut the Fed funds rate, interest rates went up. Why? Because Wall Street didn't believe that inflation was going away. And it's going to take that belief before we get effective interest rate reductions. So now let me go my econometric model on y'all. Let me put my PhD in finance and statistics to work. I model everything. So in fact, my dissertation was on residential mortgage rates. And that's exactly what it was about. So I've been forecasting interest rates for 40 years now. So what I do is I say, okay, we know what the Fed funds target is. We know what the 10-year Treasury is. We have a futures market on the 10-year Treasury. We have the Fed tell us what the 10-year Fed funds rate will be. Can we forecast in advance what 30-year rates will be? So those of y'all that had statistics in college, put on your hat, think of regression again, analysis. And that first red arrow up the top says my model in explaining mortgage rates, 30-year conventional mortgage rates, explains 95.7% of all variability. In other words, every 20 times I bet this model, I win 19 and lose once. So it's a very good model. The second red arrow says, hey, how good is it? It's a phenomenal model. Look at all those zeros. They say it's good if it's less than 0.05. I got 14 zeros that's less than. And then lastly, a really good, robust model on the bottom right-hand corner will have all those less than 0.05. In other words, what I got is a phenomenal model, and it's very good at explaining interest rates. So what does that mean for us today? Well, this is the mortgage. This is the equation. 30-year rates, you put those other variables in there. But here's what you get. The actual red line is the actual 30-year mortgage rate. The gray bar, that's what my model forecast. It's pretty good, isn't it? So let's see where we're at as of this morning. At 4 o'clock this morning, no kidding, 4 o'clock, the 10-year Treasury rate today was 4.167%. The Fed has got their top end of their Fed funds target at 3.75%. That says that rates today, if you look on the left-hand side, 3.75, let's go to 4, should be 6.24%. We're at 6.15%. Rates are actually a little lower than they need to be right now. Do I see rates quickly getting out of the 6% range? My answer is no. And for those of y'all that are selling to buyers as we speak today and not just taking listings, what I would tell a prospective buyer today that's looking, quit waiting for rates to drop, go out and search and find that house, buy it, lock in a fixed long-term mortgage rate, and if rates go lower, you refinance. I think the quicker that people get off the fence and get into home ownership, the better off they're going to be. We're not going to see any improvement in affordability from even minor reductions in mortgage rates because we're probably going to see some minor increases in home prices. So jobs are one of those gauges in the cockpit. That's where we gauge the economy. This is total U.S. jobs. I want you to look at this picture. That dip over there in 2009, 2010, that's a great recession. And then for the next 10 years, you can see we added about 20-some million jobs. And when that doggone COVID started, we lost, numerically speaking, almost every job we created the prior 10 years. Bam, they were gone. Great news is they're all back. We got them all back. That's great news. Really good news. But I want to show you Houston, the Houston, Pasadena, Woodlands, Metropolitan Statistical Area. That's all these counties that we count, whether it's from Galveston all the way down, all the way through the Woodlands and east and west. Notice that from the trough in the Great Recession to the bottom of the pandemic, we only lost half the jobs we created in the prior 10 years. So Houston's economy was more resilient. It stood COVID better than the U.S., 50% better. And not only that, we have all those jobs back. In fact, Houston today is growing jobs at the same rate as the U.S. today. And that's good news, folks. Great news. I do want to add this. We always hear politics. And by the way, if a Republican or Democrat tells you something, they'll probably not tell you something true. Is that fair enough? Both sides of the aisle on this one. You had a lot of criticism when President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is a political appointee. The president has every right to do it. But you would have fired them too. It made no difference. Under President Biden, when they were forecasting how many jobs we created in the 48 months President Biden was in office, they overestimated it 45 out of 48 months. Now, if you had someone that was only right 3 out of 48 months, would you retain them if they were investing for you or picking futures? And in fact, this past June, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said the U.S. added 147 jobs. They've now restated that down that we lost 13,000. So don't play the politics game. Let's just look at the raw numbers, which is where we need to be on these things. Now, let me tell you some good news for Texas, but not good news nationwide. This is the total number that are involved in real estate rental and leasing, brokerages, property management, whether it's residential or commercial, even agricultural, and leasing. You'll notice in 2020, at the very top of that yellow bar, that's actually where that bar, this area is actually during a recession. The green, that's how many people were in the U.S. in real estate at that point in time. Today, we have 140,200 more people in real estate nationwide than we had then. And yet our housing sales are over 1 million less units and our commercial sales are half what they were. We have too many people in real estate in the U.S. Let me show you Houston. And what's amazing is we have about the same number of real estate that we had in 2019. And what's the key about 2019? That's the last normal year we had before the pandemic. And that's the key to focus on. We'll do that the rest of this trip today. U.S. home sales, and the black bar on the right, it's total number of home sales in the prior 12 months. Just look where 2019 is. That's that red line. Guys, 2019, we were selling what? 5 million existing homes. Today, it's 3.8 million. We got 1,200,000 fewer homes a day. We're not anywhere near normal, the 2019 number. Now, the blue bars, you read it on the left, that's home prices. Home prices continue to go up a little bit slower. The problem with home prices right now is affordability is miserable. And we see no improvement over that for the next 24 months for the consumer. But let me show you Houston. And the key here, black line's the number of sales. 2019 is the key year, the last normal year we had. We're selling as many homes today in Houston, Texas, the entire MSA as we did in all of 2019. In other words, Houston, Texas is one of the very few markets in the country back to normal. And everyone's waiting for the housing market to recover. It just did. And that's why I'm telling you, if you got that prospective buyer out there looking for a home, show them this graph that we're all the way back. Now, home values in Houston are kind of sputtering like -1%, -2%, somewhere there. Those are little just adjustments. Do I think home values are going down? They have a little bit, and I'll show you that in greater detail. So where are we going to go from here? This happens to be Fannie Mae's forecast. They see it's about 6-7%, maybe 8% more existing home sales this year than last year, a little bit more next year. You throw in the MBA, kind of much the same thing. My forecast is, and I ran this for Renee Galvan, I think we're going to be up 3.8% this year. So you as a professional realtor will have 3.8% more transactions to pick from this year than last year. And that's actually pure commissions if you think about that. Yet even if we have flat home values, it's 4 or 5%, and that will beat inflation. That is good news. If you're in commercial, I guess this is where we pay the funeral dirge for you. You talk about tough life. This is the Ameriprise Financial Center in Minneapolis. It's a building that sold for $200 million in 2016. It was assessed last year for $90 million, and it sold for $6.25 million. Oh my goodness. Commercial real estate has just crashed. I'm going to talk a little about apartments. As realtors, I've always believed this, that you need to be in commercial, you need to be in property management, you need to be leasing apartments and houses to people. And, by the way, HAR covers all that from Commercial Gateway, HR.com on the rentals and everything else. One of the best websites in the United States of America. But I want you to notice this, that our apartment values have not only troughed, they're growing. And that's unique in the country because the U.S. for the last 5 quarters has had static apartment values, and we're sitting here growing and growing, and that's good news. Now, one of our problems we have in Houston, Texas is we've built too much housing, but wait a second. We haven't built too much single-family housing affordable. We built too many apartments, mainly Class A apartments with high amenities, granite and marble and hardwood floors and what have you. What I've done here, and y'all get all the copies of this PDF later from our great HER people, I went through, and for every year since 1991, I showed you the number of new single-family building permits for the MSA and the new multifamily building permits, which could be condos or apartments or co-ops or anything else in between. And then I looked at the number of new jobs. I always said that we need between 1.2 to 1.5 new jobs per net new dwelling unit. If you go through 2024, we only have 1 job per new dwelling unit. We've overbuilt. And it's one of the reasons that a lot of people are staying in apartments who would rather live in a single family. It's just so much more affordable. That's going to start changing because our values of those apartments are going up, which means our rents are going up because our cap rates haven't gone up at all. Apartment sales, well, remember 2019 was our last normal year, so to speak, another abysmal year. But I actually think we're going to see apartment sales shake loose this year because I think people see housing as an opportunity, particularly our old existing structures, because it costs so much to build new ones. My hat's off to builders in Houston, Texas, and I know that many of you sell new homes. Builders did a decision 3 years ago, and they said as home prices rose and as interest rates rose, they would cut their margins and buy down interest rates, and they put people in houses. Builders are very smart because they kept their entire teams of concrete crews, electricians, and plumbers together. They're not making as much money as they made, but they're selling a lot of houses. I still think, though, you can buy existing stock for less than you can buy new, and therefore there'll be some increased activity this year. And then finally, within Texas, I want to show you one other little twist. This is commercial apartment sales, and I want you to notice that price per unit has gone up in Houston, Texas, 3.9%. It's gone down 8.5% in Austin, where they way overbuilt. And then you throw in this one, cap rates. The higher the cap rate, the less you pay for the property. Shoot, if I'm out there buying apartments right now, I think I want to buy in Houston because I pay less for a higher cash flow. Trying to tell you, Houston's starting to look very, very attractive to our market. Oh, and then creativity. We're going to kind of talk about creativity. Guys, this is the old BP, Phillips Petroleum, Conoco executive tower in the energy corridor, which we don't need anymore. We learned we don't need offices. So what they did is they created corporate residences and apartments. And you're going to see more and more and more. This is called the WAT. And what a great name in the energy corridor to convert literally the headquarters of oil and gas companies into housing and call it the WAT, about energy. kind of cool. And if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to go take a tour of it. You might be surprised. And then this was announced. We're only going to get one city center at 1021 Main Street. They're going to convert it to a 553 unit residential project. Starts this February, should be done a year from now. Take a look at that one. Creativity. I want y'all to be creative and inventive like they have in aircraft. They give us many more dials and gauges for our accuracy to get there. I love this one. We're looking for computer engineers who can solve difficult problems. What X is 24, Y is equal to 30. The firm number is that equation. Call us if you can. Now, you and I both know we're only going to get smart people calling that number. Am I correct? Remember I told you earlier this week I spoke in Miami. I spoke to a group of people from New York and New Jersey. And how do you relate to them? Buc-ee's. Talk about creativity. Not that they invented a convenience store. They didn't. Not that they invented a gas station. They didn't. They reinvented it. This is the largest convenience store in the United States of America. It's Lillian, Texas. It's 75,000 square feet. Just to explain to them how that, I said, imagine yourself, you're a beer vendor. A standard convenience store is the guy on the bottom right. A Buc-ee's is the guy with the stack. Think about what they've done. Oh, and remember, 70% of the profits from a convenience store come from the food and beverage sales, not from the gasoline sales. And with Buc-ee's, everything is privately labeled for profitability. If you haven't stopped in Lillian, just go stop and just take a gander. That whole shed out there is all gas pumps. Well, they do say they have gas pump number 260. They only count every other one. So 130 gas pumps is pretty amazing. Oh, and on the left, you can see where I gassed up there last Friday, $2.17, 17.9 cents. But look at the salaries Buc-ee's is paying. You would never imagine a convenience store would pay a food service manager $150,000 to $200,000, would you? Guys, I want you to walk in there with your HAR sharp glasses on and take a look at how you need to reinvent your service, how you're going to have more value-added service, how you're going to sell more units. Buc-ee's, well, shoot. Can we do Buc-ee's here? You bet. We're seeing teams of realtor professionals that are selling literally 300 homes. Oh, and get this one. Buc-ee's just opened at Texas A&M University, not with the gas station, because you don't need it on campus, but they will sell you all their favorite foods, all Buc-ee branded, at Texas A&M University. I'm just trying to tell you, we need to take lessons from them. We need to continue to innovate, guys. I'm a good beer drinking guy. If any of y'all are, we'll go have a cold one sometime. Now, I have a friend that sent me this. O'Reilly Auto Parts. They said if you go to O'ReillyAuto.com, search for part 121G, you'll pop up a part. Go do it. So I did it. Now, how many of y'all have randomly gone to O'Reilly Auto Parts and searched for this part number that someone said what it should be? Guess what it was? The flux capacitor. And you chuckle to yourself. You got to chuckle. Oh, and they say, oh, we don't sell plutonium. You have to get it from your plutonium supplier. All the things that are in here. Guys, to tell you, well, when I was there, I have a 2005 X3 BMW I took European delivery on. It has weird windshield wipers. When I was on their website looking at this thing, I did order my windshield wipers. It's on my car as we speak today. So they got a sale out of this of at least windshield wipers. What are you doing to get them to your website? What are you putting there that gives value add to your customers? We got to talk about this. I love this one. When President Trump was running for president, this woman from West Texas, not from Houston, leaving Texas, leaving the U.S. if Trump is elected president, give me a call. Let's get your home sold. I'm kind of curious how many she got. I have her number down below. I almost need to call her and ask her, don't I?
I did the same thing.
Did you really?
I sure did.
You got, wow, I'm proud of you. It's about connecting. So let me go back to the first airplane that went to Paris. And I want you to look at that cockpit. And like I said, folks, that is just like Houston. So selling real estate, we had paper MLS books. And then we went to the second generation cockpit. And this is HAR.com now. It's digital. It's automated. You're blessed to actually be a member of the best association of realtors in the United States of America. All the technology they have to offer. But I think it's time for you all to embrace technology. Be aware of what other businesses are doing in that and follow that lead. Headwinds, tailwinds, turbulence, but getting there, folks. We're going to get there. I think it's going to be a pretty good year. Up about 4% in sales.
Well, thank you for that, Ted. That is very uplifting and great to hear. Great for my business. Thank you so much. What a way to start the new year. That's a lot of information to digest. And I see why we have so many questions in the Q&A. So let's get to them. Our first question comes from Eddie Massa, who wrote that President Trump is a proponent of boosting oil and gas production. How do you see that impacting Texas and more specifically Houston?
Houston is the technology capital of oilfield production in the entire world. So number one, even if we boost oil and gas production, it's not in Texas proper, we're going to ship a lot of that technology and people out of here. So again, this is corporate America's nest for where they live in that. Secondly, you just go down to the Houston Ship Channel. Just look at all petroleum distillates and everything else that goes out of here and the refining end of it. It's all value add. And then most importantly, natural gas is critical for low carbon dioxide electricity production. In fact, it's among the lowest of any of the fossil fuels. It's the lowest. And we're going to get cheaper electricity and build more manufacturing facilities here because of that. When you throw in both, the Houston Ship Channel area, the port, and what have you, that adds almost 1 million net new jobs equivalent to Houston, Texas. And it shows for every container that we bring in from out of the country full, we ship 2 full containers out of goods and services that we've manufactured here. All that adds up to a better Houston economy.
Well, we love to hear it. Excellent. Will first-time homebuyers begin buying in 2026? The study shows that they're awaiting leasing and living in multifamilies. So based on the numbers, you think they're up, it sounds like?
Well, they're living and leasing in multifamilies is because of affordability. And particularly in Houston, because we have built so many apartments, nice apartments, Class A apartments.
Excellent ones, yeah.
But we've overbuilt them. And as a result, we only have 1 new job per every new dwelling unit of any type. And we need 1.2 to 1.5 new jobs. And so economically speaking, a lot of people will continue to rent apartments because just the simple cost of them.
Got it.
But a lot of them would prefer to live in a single family home. On the other hand, I think it's not time to give up looking for a single family home. If you have something that makes sense, buy it, lock in long-term fixed financing, and if rates go down, refinance it, and don't look back. If you look at it, the largest single share of wealth that most Americans have is their home or real estate investments. I think it's time to get off the fence and get with it.
Excellent. Good to hear that. If we start seeing more office conversion to residential, is it condo units for sale or more apartments for lease?
So there was a study done in 2019 by CBRE, and what they did is they looked, and this is before the pandemic, before we all abandoned our offices, and they said, what percent of all office buildings are even convertible to residential? And what they found out was about 1 out of 5, 19% and change. So that means we have 80% and change of apartments, of offices that can't be converted to apartments. I looked at Stuart Title's Ed over at Four Oaks Place. Those footprints is 15,000 square feet per floor. There's not enough window space to convert those to residences.
Right.
So we just have dark interior walls and everything else like that. But I want you to show the creativity of winning. In Boston, there was an office building that was created to laboratory space. It rents for 4 times as much.
4 times as much?
You go in Houston, we've already seen some office buildings being converted to self-storage. Wow. Literally climate controlled self-storage.
Right.
And that's a growth industry because remember, we're living in apartments. We got too much stuff. We got to have that storage unit. So we're starting to see a lot more people are thinking, okay, outside of the box.
Being more creative.
Be more creative, yes.
And as realtors, you think that we should also attempt to be more creative?
Oh, you have
to be.
I think in the conversions of some of these properties, there's billions and hundreds of millions of profits to be made. A lot in Houston, Texas.
Well, let's get on it. That's amazing.
I agree with that, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I actually have a question in regards to AI facilities, right? So like all this growth that's happening, especially with like AI and having to build these very large cooling centers and data centers and things. I don't know much about that, to be honest with you, Ted, but I wanted to know how do you feel like that also affects Houston real estate?
So we have a problem in Texas is we don't have enough electric generation growth.
Got it.
And we haven't expanded our grid hardly at all. Remember, we're our own unique grid. We are not connected with anyone else. And what we've learned is we're all so attracted to wind energy and solar. The problem is the sun doesn't shine all the time. The wind doesn't blow all the time. Wind peaks in early evening. Demand for power peaks in mid-afternoon. It's almost prohibitively expensive to store it in batteries. We've learned that. And so what we have is a grid that needs, during those short periods of time, have a bigger pipe to take more electricity, but we don't have that. So we really need to look at, when they talk at AI, they're literally looking at what they call reliable energy, and that is not wind or solar. So we really need to look at our oil and gas, and particularly our natural gas, because we have so much natural gas in the state of Texas and in this country both, because we can spool up natural gas GE turbine generators real quick and spool them back down real quick. You can't do that with nuclear reactors. Certainly can't do it with wind farms. They run or they don't. It is what it is. So we have a big problem on a lot of the AI of just having enough electricity for the future, much less those massive sinkholes. Now, I've actually done a lot of review appraisals on some proposed projects in the Northeast. And what we found out, they're proposing to build this big data center, this big AI center, but they can't get the electricity, therefore you can't build it. So I think the real key, and this is where Texas is a little bit in the driver's seat, although it's taken us a few years to get there, we have so much natural gas. If we could produce copious quantities of cheap natural gas generated electricity that you can spin up and spin down as you need it, that's known as reliable energy, we could be in a catbird seat and be the big winner on this one.
Well, I like being the big winner. That's fantastic. Another very interesting question that we've received is, do you think that the 50-year mortgage plan will come into life in 2026? And if so, how do you feel like that would impact the market?
Well, personally, I don't care for the 50-year mortgage plan at all.
Okay, great.
That's just,
elaborate.
Well, you're going to make a slightly lower payment for 50 years.
Yeah.
And I actually think when a person gets around 65, I hope they have their home paid off so that when they go in retirement, they can maintain that home. Remember, 80% of retirees want to age in place. Right. 80% from one of the latest home buyer surveys. As a result, man, it's hard to age in place if you can't afford your house, particularly when we look at insurance costs and property taxes in Texas. I would hope that people would get that off. In fact, when young people ask me all the time, I've got this money, I'm looking to buy maybe a second house or a rental condo or something like that. And I ask them, do you own a home? And they say, yes. I said, I think I'd pay off that mortgage if it's over 6% quicker than anything else. And you don't know how rich you are when all your check is yours. You can save up money for investing so quick. So I'm a big believer in owning your own home, particularly when you're getting in the 50s and 60 years of age.
Well, excellent. I'm sure our YPN viewers have a little whiles to go with that, but
well, they do.
But let's all work hard towards having our homes paid off. That's excellent. Awesome. So going back to what you kind of mentioned earlier about having too many people in real estate, there is a question that came up that was very interesting that says, it sounds like throughout after COVID times, there was a boom in license holders, right?
Yes. Throughout
the United States. Has that started to decline a little bit, even though we do have several, license holders, whether they're practicing full time or not, in Houston? What are you seeing as far as
So what we're seeing is maybe not in license holders, but we're seeing, and there's a classification code, the U.S. government, Department of Bureau of Labor Service, BLS, they actually classify people on the type of work they do.
Okay.
And if you're in 55530, you're in real estate brokerage, property management, or leasing. It could be residential, rural, it could be commercial. And in the US, we have 140,000 more people today in those jobs today than we did before COVID, even though we're selling 20 to 40% less real estate.
Wow.
In Texas and Houston, we have the same number, but we're selling the same amount of houses as we sold in 2019. So in Houston, you're actually a little bit better off than the rest of the country. So people have adjusted here very smartly. And what I think is like the tools of HAR.com become available, I think it increases and magnifies the productivity of the real estate professional so much. We may need fewer people in real estate. Right now we have about 5.4 months inventory of homes available for sale. Just 10 years ago, we always thought that 6 months was normal. I think maybe 4 months is normal because we sell it differently. I mean, if you're a consumer, you can log into HR.com and see every new listing and every property you were looking at that disappeared overnight in just one email. And so it's much more efficient to search for a home. So I think less inventory is necessary. But on the other hand, it's helping the affordability of prospective buyers as our home prices slip just a tiny, tiny bit here today.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to let our first-time home buyers know about all of this great information. So circling back to President Trump for a second, we did get another question that comes in that says, with Trump's recent announcement to disallow institutional investors from purchasing single-family homes, how do you anticipate that will impact Houston specifically? Do you believe that part of the announcement includes that single-family homes currently that they currently hold will have to be sold? Do you have an idea of what percentage of homes in Houston are owned by institutional investors?
Well, my understanding is less than 3% of all homes are owned by institutional investors in the entire United States.
Okay.
And I'm gonna back up, and I want to go into the Great Recession in 2008. And in some parts of the country, we saw home values fall as much as 50%. And
Wow.
it was almost like 88, 89, 90 all over again when we saw the Great Reset. And people lost their homes and they lost their wealth. And we saw it again in 2008. But this time what happened, you had BlackRock and Blackstone and a few others saying there, what we're going to do is we're going to buy those homes from the people who are losing them. We're going to rent them to them. And 3 years later, we're going to sell them back to them. Well, 3 years came and went, and they'd financed them for 3 years. And then all of a sudden they found out this is such a phenomenal return because we paid 50 cents on the dollar to have these things of what they would cost to be built. They hung on to them. We're not seeing a lot of institutional investors in housing today in new acquisitions. They're managing their current portfolios. I think as long as they have an adequate return, they'll maintain them. I don't think that the president will force them to sell them at all. I think he's just going to say, you're not buying anymore. And so what I think is going to happen is you will see those eventually come back on the market only when that yield goes away.
Got it.
And right now it's an attractive yield because they paid 50 cents on the dollar to buy them.
They sure did.
They didn't pay 50 cents on the dollar in Houston. We weren't that cheap because we'd learned the first time around in 88, 89, and 90. But we still had some discounts going on. So really, if you look at it, I don't think institutional investors are a big bully at all in home ownership today. They're very good property managers. They understand that, and they know Wall Street will hold them accordingly to that. And so I think that we're going to see just very fewer homes sold to institutional, almost none to institutional investors. But I don't know if investors will dump their portfolios today at all.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. That was fantastic. We don't seem to have any other questions at this time. If you pre-registered for today's presentation, you will receive Dr. Jones' slide deck via email. And as a reminder, HAR will produce a podcast that will be available to all members. Details about this podcast will be posted in the HAR weekly newsletter. Thank you again, Dr. Jones, for sharing your forecast with us today. You always present it in a fantastic and entertaining way, an actionable way. And, it's highly competitive in this industry. Agents need to learn as much as they can, so this is very helpful. And you should be taking advantage of HAR's affordable and sometimes free professional development courses. You could also be leaving money on the table, so don't miss out on these training opportunities. Thank you again, and remember, if you want to learn more about our award-winning YPN and attend our events, make sure to follow our YPN Facebook page and stay in the know. Have a happy and safe and prosperous New Year's, everybody.